You're listening to the Digital Deep Dive, where we tackle the newest trends, strategies, and pain points shaping growth across the digital landscape. From Amazon and D2C to international expansion, join our host and e-commerce leaders across multiple industries for in-depth discussions on how to maximize your brands in the digital arena. Now, here's your host, Aaron Conant.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Digital Deep Dive. My name is Aaron Conant, and just an interesting topic today from the standpoint of I spent, I think a lot of you know, the first 17 years of my career in the pharma space, and we cover a lot of different verticals on this podcast as far as e-commerce goes. But we haven't dug a lot into what's happening in the pharmaceutical space outside of OTC, and then getting into RX as a whole, just because of some of the complications. And I don't think those companies are slow to get into e-commerce on purpose or the digital side of things. There's just a lot more restrictions. So got a great, friend, partner, supporter of the network, formerly on the brand side, Jacob Harrison, who's now working at a company called CMI, and he agreed to jump on. So that I think they kind of brought him in to head up the digital side. And so it's going to be a great conversation. I'm looking forward to picking his brain. But, Jacob, I'll kick it over to you if you want to do an intro on yourself in the company. That'd be awesome. And we can kind of jump into the conversation as a whole. Sound good?
Great. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on, Aaron. I really appreciate it. As you know, a longtime supporter of BWG, and love all the virtual events I've been able to be a part of. So it's a really exciting opportunity to be on with you. My name is Jacob Harrison. I have 10 years of e-commerce experience across a plethora of, marketing channels. And in the last few years, I've really narrowed in on e-commerce as a direct-to-consumer organization, selling things like shoes and glassware to individuals and kind of enhancing site experience, as well as continuing to overlook multiple channels in marketing. CMI is a media agency in the health and wellness vertical. Predominantly in the last 30 years, our focus has been on pharma. And as we've expanded into e-commerce, our ability to open up to direct consumer and operate both e-commerce sites as well as on platforms such as Amazon and Walmart, which you're very familiar with. We've been beginning to expand and look at innovation in the space and how we can properly market our clients.
Yeah. So, as you look, what do you see is changing in this landscape? Everything's moving so fast. And a lot of times, I'm covering the traditional CPG or food or fashion space as a whole. But the pharma space is just unique. Like, what do you see changing generally across the e-com landscape as a whole? And do you see are we going to start seeing a lot more, RX jumping into, you mentioned direct to consumer. Would love to hear your thoughts on that. But what about the landscape as a whole from a pharma perspective?
So I believe that the landscape overall is really interesting. As I've ingratiated myself into the organization over the last year, I've learned quite a lot. And one of the main things that you come across is the eagerness and the willingness to jump into e-commerce as a new area, a new platform, if you will, to market to consumers, but a struggle in what that really looks like. But what I think you're noticing is as big retailers, Amazon, Walmart, Target, take more of a vested interest in the space, it's opening up new opportunity to RX partners that, and clients that we have. While they've been able to take advantage of things such as programmatic, search, SEO, it's really been hard to navigate elsewhere and really open up your product to new consumers. That's shifting, I think. I think Amazon, has gone into PillPack and buying One Medical and MedTail locations. You see Walmart is starting to enhance their clinical trials and open up in-person opportunities for trials and clinics. Kroger's doing the same. You're just seeing rapid expansion into the space and large investment. So I think those opportunities are going to begin to open themselves up to our clients.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. A lot of times there's this huge shift. I can see how they blend, right? That people are viewing Amazon, if we isolate on, those guys right now, as this brand idea has shifted from, hey, I was a platform that I'm selling things on to, hey, this is a marketing platform where I can get in front of millions of eyeballs, right? I'm going to leverage it as marketing and, platform to get my brand awareness and product awareness out there. Oh, by the way, it sells, through product as well. but it's almost a marketing first approach. And if I think about the limitations that fall in place around RX, right, is around, the distribution of product is the hardest, right? But the marketing piece is what's golden, right? That's what they're going after. So I can see a massive amount. So do you see then with these partnerships, then, these larger organizations, big pharma going in and leveraging the Amazon ad network, the Walmart ad network, all of these, but then obviously with the end game, like you're saying, of, hey, let's deliver RX products.
Yeah, I think the hindrance has really been on targeting, right? And when I started my career, I could pick Aaron out of a lineup if I wanted to on the back end of any platform and directly market to you. And as we've seen over time, PII has become more important to protect. You already have things like HIPAA laws in place in the medical field. And then you layer on things like CCPA, GDPR, all of these become real barriers to targeting one-to-one. So I think the first step is really opening up clients' eyes to the fact that marketing in a broad stroke marketing or brand awareness marketing is just as important to the end game as direct, conversion type marketing. With that, I think you're going to start to see those types of opportunity be the first way that these platforms kind of dip their toes into the water. Contextual based display, very simplistic. But what it's going to open up is a huge audience base. Something along the lines of 75% of consumers search on Amazon before they purchase a product, whether they purchase it on platform or off. And I think that just bolsters our ability to really target new people and open the eyes to millions of new consumers that haven't been able to be aware of our products in the past.
Yeah, I think we also can blend in, when you think about the demographic that is, consuming the most on the medical side, right? I mean, we do a lot of calls and conversations, around what's happened, I wouldn't say necessarily in the pharma space, but in the caregiver space as a whole. And you think about hospitals and primary care clinics, and the demographic that consumes those the most is an older demographic that was, in many cases, not quite as e-com savvy as the younger generation, which is consuming less of those. And so as we go through the pandemic, and they're literally forced to all of a sudden jumping into doing everything online, from the questionnaires, the scheduling, to figuring out, where they're going to go. You're not just wandering into a doctor's office anymore. And so there's been this massive shift, and it's funny because it really carries over to banking as well. Same demographic, highly use of banks and banking interactions
Sure.
as a whole, and going to online. And so it's just, I think it's really pushed where, maybe 5 years ago, you wouldn't have gotten the bang for your buck. But at this point in time, like, we pushed that whole demographic into, I don't know if they're comfortable with e-com, but they're at least comfortable enough to use it and understand it. And so all of that data then, with all their interactions, is out there, and kind of what you're saying, targeting is right there. Right. So.
Yeah, and I don't think, one of the big things that we talk about internally is omni-channel, right? The opportunity to expand across both in-store and online is ever present now. I think what you're starting to see, is an opening in retail, like, in-store brick and mortar locations. But I think where the difference is, in what you brought up much more eloquently than I am, is the shift to digital, right? So it's about giving options. It's about what that retail experience is like in person for the individual, but it's also the ability to fulfill prescriptions and ensure that, patients are getting refills on their prescriptions in a timely fashion. I know from, recent family experiences that there's nothing more important than ensuring that if people are on medication, that they're getting their refills on time and in a timely manner, and without an inconvenience, because it does hinder them from going back and, following up and following through with getting that second month, third month of their treatment. So I think, if you can create an in-store experience, great. I think, to your point, the comfortability of an older generation now being online has also opened up a lot of avenues and opened up a real opportunity to see quote unquote ROI for our clients, now that the traditional, clientele of these products is online.
Yeah, I mean, then you think about, I'd like to dive into the direct consumer, just because I built out a direct to consumer site. In the OTC pharma space, it's really tough. On the B2B side, it was much easier to have a profit just based on price point. and building a market basket. On the direct consumer individual side was a little bit different, a little bit harder. But when you're talking about direct consumer, I mean, one of the traditional things was hardest to do was to get that target demographic. But if we can grab that, right, now we can start marketing to a very specific demographic. We can drive really targeted traffic, increase conversions, because I mean, everybody's concerned, right, about the cost of converting a customer now. Like, so what do you see as far as, are you talking direct consumer RX, or are you thinking, hey, there's also the adjacent categories that aren't necessarily RX, but we can leverage all the data we have to target different products?
So I think there's a multitude of different ways to do this. I think there's direct to consumer with information. Obviously, we can't fulfill prescriptions directly from client to end consumer, but I think we can provide the information to get the consumer to the doctor to get that prescription. Where I think that the innovation really comes from, and we're talking about this internally, is your point of care references. So pharmacies as point of care. So the amount of information, the ability to leverage that data with partners like Walgreens and CVS and Target, and layer audiences on top of the existing work that we're doing. So when we look at a programmatic offering, running display on contextually relevant sites, we can layer on a Walgreens very niche data set down to the disease state to be able to more accurately get our products in front of consumers. I think one of the things that CMI has prided itself on, and something that I'm taking full advantage in our channel, is the ability for us to leverage data, to partner, to be at the forefront of collecting these data and utilizing audiences in an effective way, both at the point of care and as well as in our online presence.
What are some of the carryovers that you see are most important? If there's like recommendations given out, because there's people jumping out of traditional e-com right into roles where you're at. I mean, it's going to happen really fast, because I think there's a lot of other categories that are ramping up the digital side of things. So they're coming from a traditional brand side and they're jumping into these higher, I'd say more complicated. I don't know if it's more complicated, per se. I guess it is, right? You're outside of GDPR and CCPA, which kind of constrict. You're into PII, which people say yes, but then you're also talking to HIPAA compliance.
Correct.
And that's a whole nother level. Higher regulations, even on what you can say on marketing, right? The amount of marketing information you can provide, what you're providing, the approval process for those, it's greater. But I think, we're going to see a lot of the Jacobs of the world being yanked out for their expertise and pulled into roles like you're currently at in, I guess, higher regulated industries.
I mean, it's been a real learning experience for me and kind of eye-opening. We look at marketing from how we want to communicate our brand to a consumer. And, in a lot of organizations, especially in retail where I come from, it's really that straightforward. How do we want to represent our brand, and what do we want to say to the consumer? Now that, I'm in the pharma vertical, you're really looking at what can you say to the consumer? How do you want to, market your brand is like a secondary or tertiary metric. When you talk about your marketing, it's what can I say? What is going to be approved? And then, you go through all of those, not just compliance from an FDA perspective, but also, is the client going to approve it? What do we feel about it? Does it represent the brand accurately? Is the end patient getting all of the information that they need? We have to list out things like side effects and some things that in a traditional marketing scheme, like, retail, you would never tell, someone buying your t-shirt what was wrong with the t-shirt. Right. But there's a lot more to the marketing in this vertical than, most others.
So would you have these, is the recommendation then to launch a direct to consumer site with, I'd say adjacent product categories? So I'm thinking like blood pressure, right? So a blood pressure medicine, maybe, your big pharma, you've got an RX drug that addresses, blood pressure. Well, then blood pressure cuffs. I mean, there's so many adjacent categories that you could get very, very highly targeted. But there's also the flip side is you bring in like a Miracle or somebody that does the marketplace aspect, where you could actually just build out a giant marketplace that ties in to other brands who already have those products as well. Would love to hear like how you're thinking about that space as well, because that could be, you've got the data, you've got the information, how many different ways can you leverage it, I guess, to make it better for the end consumer?
Sure. I mean, if I was on the client side, I could definitely see a case being made for making you know, CPG goods for really end patients, right? Not really even consumers in this state, because the goal is to then get them onto the medication. Where I really see the first step, however, is in partnership. We can work with big retailers. Think of like the Krogers and the Albertsons of the world, Walgreens, where we can get not only point of sale data, but also point of pharmacy data, or what I call POP data. It's the opportunity to leverage the small amount that we do know about a consumer, create those trends, and layer on what other aisles they're shopping in within the store or online, and then be able to take advantage of that data in that way. So perhaps we see Aaron goes and buys a blood pressure cuff, and he becomes layered into a data set, a demographic profile set, and then we build lookalike audiences off of that, and then our scope is big enough to really start marketing our blood pressure medication. That's where I really see the first step being taken. I think after that really comes down to how do we directly market from a search perspective on these platforms, utilizing the same data. How do we open up those types of opportunities, not just for display and brand awareness, but with a click-through presence, whether that's a branded storefront on a retail platform or clicking to a direct-to-consumer site for more information, or even in some cases connecting you to a doctor to get the consultation and hopefully get the prescription. And then I think, to your point, like the next step from there would be, how do these organizations really take advantage of their consumer base and open up additional areas of selling? Because, it's far and few between that your product is perfect for everybody, but there's an opportunity to leverage what you do know about the person to also give them other avenues to shop with you.
Yeah, I mean, I can see, from the standpoint of as much data as you can collect, right? Grabbing as much as you can. AI is now in a spot where I think it can crunch it efficiently. But if you're in this data collection mode, as many touch points as possible, trying to understand it, and then, like you're saying, do the customer lookalike, right? Then you start going back to kind of the start of the conversation, which is around these paid media networks, where somebody's watching Prime TV with commercials or Hulu or whatever. You can get. I mean, I think sometimes people forget that everybody in America could be on Prime Video watching Thursday Night Football, hypothetically, and they all get a customer specific ad based on who they are, completely personalized. And so the more you can crunch down and get to isolating individuals that fit a certain cohort, the more targeted you can get with your ads, but also your ad spend, right? Which is huge for people right now, right? Is how much does it cost, right? Advertisement costs are up, content costs are up, there's budget crunches everywhere. If you've got enough data, you can start getting very, very specific with who you're targeting and therefore control your spend at the same time. Get a better return on spend. Wow. No. Neat.
And I think that really is the next wave, right? We've seen these integrations with organizations like, Viva Crossix, and getting that full picture, right? That closed loop marketing opportunity where you can really see the full shopping funnel and that life cycle. I think, candidly, in the pharma space, it's taking longer to layer those components in that data in because of sensitivity around the information. Certainly, we don't want the end patient to feel that we're invading their privacy with the information we can gather or can't. So the idea is to obviously keep that in the forefront of our minds. But I think you're seeing that evolution. I think, it's so funny when I started, you would do direct mail and you just kind of hoped whoever was in your mailing list was going to come back and shop with you. And now it got so targeted, and now we're kind of trying to find that middle ground. And the more, to your point, the more avenues that we can collect this data from, and the more we can really create a holistic, demographic profile that encompasses, all these little touch points, the more accurate we can get. And I think in this vertical, that's of the utmost importance, because, you see things like pharma deserts. I'm not sure if you've seen them where you are, but, there's a lack of access, really. And I think the e-commerce presence, and why I'm so excited to be here at CMI doing this, is it hopefully is going to connect the missing pieces, right? It's going to get people who don't generally, take enough advantage of medical care to become more aware of products that they can be utilizing. It's going to be a way to get products without having to travel, right? Like Amazon Pharmacy, if we can get more products on there and get patients their products faster, timely, on a regulated cadence, like that's of the utmost in innovation in the space, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's neat from the standpoint of even education, right? The availability of different RX products that are out there. The follow through, the course of treatment, that's a huge issue, right? Did they get the product? Did they have access to the product? Did they finish the course of treatment? It's a multi-month treatment and you have to renew for 2 months. I know, there's a lot of, health organizations out there that are just concerned with that from a patient standpoint. Did they even follow through? Did they remember what it is? And you're right. There's all these different opportunities now. It's funny you talk about like direct mail, right? Like direct mail can now be tied in the back end the same way email and SMS is. So everybody gets a very specific offer based on who they are, or the cohort that they fall into. And so you can start really tackling the educational aspect, as well as the conversion aspect, right? Or the availability aspect, right? Because in my mind, it's all about education, right?
Right, for sure. And I think again, like that really drives into the omni-channel approach that we're looking at, right? In-store opportunities to give reminder marketing, to kind of give information on products, to stall a consumer, for a brief moment while they're in a store shopping, and then drive them online to kind of follow through in an easy fashion. You think of like the Amazons of the world. If you're a Prime member, you can get your product for as low as $5 on their Amazon Pharmacy. You can get it in 2 days. You can do things like subscribe and save, auto renew, all that kind of great innovation. So you get the best of both worlds. We can give them all the information and the tools to really arm them with and know what they're taking, and then as well as the follow through and the consumer centric aspects and levers that we like to pull in marketing to make it a fast and easy experience, both for repeat business, but as well as for the consumer to have a pleasant experience shopping with us.
It's going to be interesting because I think right now we're at the forefront. I think that's where you're sitting right now, is we're right there where people are going to start using these, e-com platforms to accelerate growth. And like, Amazon was 10 years ago, the brands that are there early, the companies that are there early are going to win. They're going to have an unfair advantage at the end of the day. And so I don't know. It's
so funny you say that, because I'd love you to elaborate on that a little bit, because I think that's the argument I'm trying to make. So I'm curious if you could elaborate a little bit on, being at the forefront or first to market, and kind of the benefit there in terms of working with Amazon.
Well, yeah, I mean, just, having built a top selling OTC pharma brand there, it was the willingness to experiment and try new things. And it's obviously cheaper at the beginning when nobody else is doing them. Usually Amazon is very aggressive in different trials that it has. They're quick to kill programs that aren't working in most cases. And just because we believe it's not working doesn't mean it's not working. Like a lot of people look at like an Amazon Fresh or something like that. Just had a great conversation around, kind of that program. Just because it's not working to us doesn't mean Amazon's not getting data that they're going to crunch and they're finding valuable in a different way, shape, or form. But just the early advantage to be building out and partnering with a platform that's cutting edge, right? Love Walmart, love what they're doing. They're going to be around for a while, but they're trying to play catch up with Amazon while Amazon's looking 5 years down the road. And so it's not about what are we doing right now and how quickly can we get it done, but what does the landscape look like 5 years from now? And how do we get there together? Amazon's open to partnering on that side of things. Traditionally, you come from the traditional brand side where, it's kind of butting heads with Amazon on a day-to-day basis. I mean, I joke, that, Jeff actually came out and said, hey, your margin is my opportunity. He said that. So nobody should be surprised right now. AVNs are going on that Amazon want more of your margin. So literally what the founder said it was all about, where they were going to make more money. They weren't going to charge the end consumer more.
Right.
But that's where I think you have a big opportunity if you can find the right partners there, the right ambassadors internally, and really forge ahead on data. That's what drives them. But the overall opportunity at the end, right? They're customer focused, and you know, they don't have access to a lot of the data that you might, or a brand or a large pharma has. But they're willing to partner. A lot of people say they aren't, but they are, just having gone through it. You find the right person within Amazon with the right goals that aligns with what you're trying to do, and it can be very, very beneficial. And I think we're just at the forefront of it right now. I think if the pandemic didn't happen, we're still 3 or 4 years away from being at the forefront, rather than 3 or 4 years from this being fully blown out. Because the other thing was just crunching the data. Who's the right cohort? Who are you trying to target? There's so many more of that older demographic that's in there, and people are so much more comfortable on every aspect. You have so much more data available, which you can get so much more hyper specific on who you're focusing on, right? There's so much more tech that's out there now. It's been funded through all the money through the pandemic. Now we're in an interesting time because that money's drying up. So we're going to see the winners really win in the tech space and the losers start to fade away. But it's just an exciting time for where you're at. And
yeah. And you said so much that the reason I had you elaborate, you said so much that just kind of strikes in the heart, which is, working with our clients is making that case, right? When you're on the brand side, you're, usually going up to leadership and saying, hey, like, these are the great things that we should be doing in the organization, and here's why, and give them these spiels. There's also another layer or component to working with a client and making them feel comfortable in those spaces, right? Traditionally, the vertical hasn't been there. So it's not just about the marketing opportunity or the new opportunity. It's also about them feeling comfortable just in the new space. They have to feel comfortable with partnering with the big retail platform, and you have to make that case. And then you also have to make the case that, hey, you're going to put an investment behind this, and it's in beta. It's, we're testing, they're learning. But I think, at least the case I've tried to make, and I'd love to get your perspective on it, is the long-term play. It's a lifetime value play. It's not a upfront, we're going to make a $10 ROI or ROAS. It's the long-term play of, hey, this patient has been with us now for 10 years and taking our product, and look at the larger picture of the revenue we've made from them over time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a unique space. There's some, intricacies there because your patent expires, right? Generics pop on the market, right? And managing that, but it's such a big opportunity. I don't know how big pharma ignores it, right? I mean,
sure. And I think that timing kind of shrinks, right? Like right now, like I said, right now it's a longer term play. But the more you buy into it and show Amazon, the reciprocal relationship, I think that window shortens. And so you don't run into, to your point, like when patents expire and generics come up, I don't think you run into that as much if we can shorten that window. But I think the only way to get there is those organizations that are going to be at the forefront of the testing. And then they'll see the reward again on the back end when this really opens up. But we have to open up those avenues now to get to a place where you're going to see, ROI from a campaign or positive ROI from a year's performance on the platform.
Yeah, it's funny. Just getting into that space, one thing that I'm really big on right now is R&D budgets for digital. And so in the pharma space, you're predisposed to doing R&D, right? You understand that, most of what you do is going to be money down the drain. But at the end of it, you're going to have something through all that experimentation that's really, really good that you can make money on, and a lot of money on. They're in the best position to set up an R&D focused e-com or digital group where the money is gone, but it has the potential for a massive payout that might be 2 or 3 years down the road. But at least they have the mentality around how our R&D works. It can't just be stuck in IT then. Right. And R&D over there, because IT is viewed differently, but a digital R&D group, and a lot of them already have it. Right. I was in big pharma, making synthetic organic pathways for phase 1 and 2 clinical trials. And we had a budget to go out and try the newest electronic notebooks out there, the newest, equipment that was coming out, right? The newest reaction vessels, whatever it might be. It'd be really easy to set up within there a digital R&D group that's investigating everything that's out of there, including the compliance side and how it plays in. What's the software? What's the technology? What is the database? What does the CDP look like? All of those different things in a protected environment. I mean, there's that mindset is there. And that's something that I've been, really big on and encouraging brands to do, because they're missing out, especially the big brands. That's how everybody wonders, how does this little brand come out of nowhere and get $1 billion valuation and get acquired? It's because they would trial and error over and over and over again. And they wouldn't think of everyone as a loss or a defeat or a failure. They're just looking at it as one more step getting to the product they needed to get to. So,
right. And I think it's funny because on the one hand, if you took yourself, or at least for myself, if I took myself out of my role, right, that's something you're so familiar with over the last 10 years in the industry overall, right, is that willingness to test new product, really put an investment behind something and just hope that it works, more or less. And then you come into this space where it hasn't been done. It's not tried and true. There's no formal practice for it. And you're developing what that really looks like. What is it that you're comfortable with doing? What's the level of investment you really need to see that impact? Even in circumstances where we've had, a CPG product, what are those barriers and hindrances to really bring this to fruition and getting it to the end consumer? Because even from an over-the-counter product, there's still those compliance issues and need for, detailed explanation of the product and description of the product and what you can and can't say and all those same barriers. So it's really, like you said, it's an R&D process. Like, we just need to take that first step, though. The only way to get answers to the biggest issues that we've ever faced in this country is to continue to just trial and error and test and be open to not failing, but learning.
Right. You're not going to bat 1,000. You're not going to. You're going to fail along the way. But every step, if you make it a learning opportunity, you're going to get there. And it's not just, failing fast, right? Everybody just want to fail fast over and over again. But the more experiments you can do, the more variables you can try in a controlled environment, not just doing whatever and hoping something works, but in a controlled fashion, picking the variables. The more experiments you can do, the faster you can do them in the least amount of time, and capturing the best results and leaving your personal biases, aside and just letting the data talk, the quicker you're going to get to, an end result, and probably faster than anybody else that's out there. That's just the reality.
And I think what's interesting about the space is perhaps pharma has traditionally been a slower evolving space. And now what you're seeing, especially in times of testing and betas, there's a need for a sprint at times where, a partner will say, we're going to run a beta. It's going to be 15 partners and you have to jump. There can't be the slow progress, because on the flip side, they're coming from the opposite end of the spectrum, where Amazon's been doing full sprint for, a decade, and they're going to continue to full sprint, and they're not going to, they're taking obviously care and consideration for, stepping into this vertical and what that means from a data perspective, but they're also trying to make those next steps and evolve. So there's also a need for these traditional pharma clients to at times sprint and then take on that, traditionally patient side when this stuff launches. There's no telling what you can learn from it, and how we can leverage that, not just on platform, but in other channels. So as I mentioned before, working with some of these big retail platforms on just from a data component and utilizing their audiences and leveraging our audiences and be able to layer those together in other channels. That's an ROI that you're not going to necessarily see from, if I just look at the back end of Amazon and what we executed from a campaign perspective. But it definitely is an ROI that's going to bolster the performance of programmatic when we layered on additional targeting opportunity. So I think, looking at your channels holistically, looking at all of the opportunity from an offering, not from a dollar perspective, is, those are the clients that are going to be, for lack of a better way of saying it, winning. is the ability to look at it from 1,000-foot view instead of up close and personal and saying, hey, this one tactic isn't working, turn it off and let's move on.
What gets you most excited about this digital space?
It's because it's new to the vertical. It's almost like a restart. So there's, I've built a decade of experience across a tremendous number of verticals and learned so much along the way from great organizations, both on the agency side and the retail side. And this is the ability to be on the ground floor and take those learnings and help to build a vertical that isn't there yet. It's almost like taking a step back in time from your learning perspective, and then evolving so much, at such a greater pace as you're at the forefront of something new. And I think that's, an incredible opportunity. It was something I was incredibly excited about in terms of joining the team here at CMI. And something I look forward to, to really building and being at the forefront. I think we've talked to upwards of 10 major retailers. And something I say every time is, let me work hand in hand with you. Let us be a part of that evolution. Let's figure out where we can mesh now and where we can mesh later. And if you have opportunities, of how you're taking those next steps, let's talk about how our clients can get involved and be at the forefront. That's something that I pride myself on, is always, doing the best job for our clients to give them those opportunities. And we're seeing them pay off in, multiple scenarios. We're talking to clients about, some out of home opportunities that are brand new to market. We're talking to them about these betas that exist on platforms like Amazon and Walmart. We're talking about the in-person clinical trials that we see at Walmart and at Kroger. I mean, there's just endless opportunity from an omni-channel perspective. And again, like I said, to be able to be at the forefront of that and bring our clients to the forefront of that opportunity is, that's all you can ask for in a marketing role like this.
Yeah, you actually have to pick the things you're not going to do right now.
100%.
Because you're at the ground floor, there's 500 different things you get started on. But what are the 2 or 3 that are going to be the most impactful and build from there? And,
and where do they exist, right? I think what's so great too is, you start to go down an avenue of here's where that opportunity lies, whether it's at the pharmacy, whether it's online, whether it's a subscribe and save model, or a membership to on a specific platform. You see the Hims of the world where you have those membership opportunities. There's just endless amount. And where do they exist, and where do you tackle first, and what best fits the client and their needs, and what also makes the most sense both from a short term and a long term perspective of partnership, right? Going out and reaching out to these platforms and working hand in hand with them, is a long-term play for us as well, right? The more we can open ourselves up to partnering with these platforms, the more our clients get and benefit from it.
Yeah. It's at the end of the day, it's about, networking and knowledge sharing. That's
why I joined BWG. You guys have endless experts on the platform, and great learning opportunity for anyone who is fortunate enough to join.
Yeah, there's it's fun. It's a spot to be in when you're passionate about people and getting better every day. And anyways, like you, that's why you've been such a great supporter. I want to say thank you for jumping on today. When you reached out, it's this idea of it's in e-com, but it's also, my 17 years was the first 17 years of my career were all in pharma. So I kind of like to geek out on this space. So there's probably a bunch of people who listen in today and are like, oh yeah, RX pharma, not the most interesting, but for me, it's just a passion, right? It's sure. Where I got it started. My degree is in chemistry and biochemistry, and just love this space as a whole. Does a lot of good for the world. And just, I want to say, thanks again, Jacob, for jumping on the podcast today. It's been an absolute blast of a conversation. You've always been a great friend, partner, supporter of the network, and really appreciate that. And any of the last things as we kind of wrap up here? Any thoughts?
I've loved being a part of the group for the last 2 years, and obviously plan to continue. I greatly appreciate you having me on today to talk again about, my work here at CMI and the, great opportunities there are for our clients, both on Amazon platforms and in direct, to consumer e-commerce. I'm super excited to see where this takes us, and hopefully we'll be able to do this again as some of these strides are taken over the next couple of years.
Definitely, as it fits into all these different e-com platforms. So 100%. It's going to be great to check in. So thanks again, Jacob. And with that, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Digital Deep Dive. Thanks everybody for tuning in.
Thank you.